Greetings, everyone. I hope you are fine. I hope you are doing well. I would like to take this moment to say thank you to all people who have subscribed to this channel, those who are watching, those who are sharing, those who are liking. I just want to say thank you very much. We may not always agree, but the most important thing is that we have to agree on this one thing, that you have to believe in yourself. You have to trust yourself. That's the most important thing. History is important. Why history is important is because history will always determine the future. In other words, if you want to make right decisions in the future, you need to look back. You need to look into your history. You have to look into your current moment so that you can make right decisions even in the future. That is why history is so important. I'm aware that right now we have many people who are like, no, history is no longer important. We shouldn't be talking about all these things because now it seems as if we are causing division, we're creating mess, we're creating confusion and all these things. But history is very important. You should not use history as a weapon to segregate other people or to hate other people, but you should always use history to help yourself so that you can make right decisions, so that you can correct the mistakes of your forefathers, so that you can learn from your forefathers, so that you can even avoid certain things in the future. Because without history, you might be manipulated by the very same strategy that was used to manipulate your forefathers. That is why history is so important. So this is part 4. This is part 4 of this letter of King Leopold II of Belgium to colonial missionaries. Why I go through this letter is because it's very important for us to know and understand that the problems that we are having today, the system that we are having today, was engineered long time ago, about 500 years ago, about 300 years ago, about 100 years ago. And again, we can also learn from the mistakes of our forefathers, because we as Black people, we have this tendency of thinking about today. The moment you get money, you are like, I have to buy this luxurious car. I have to enjoy myself. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that, but we don't have, like, for an example, this tendency of thinking about 50 years to come, 100 years to come. But if you look at this system of the colonizers and King Leopold II, they were not thinking about maybe 5 years in their lifetime. They were not thinking about those years, but they were thinking about 100 years. They were thinking about 200 years. They were thinking about 300 years. So that is why they had to engineer this system. So that is why when you see all these things, these symptoms, you have to understand that it's as a result of the system that was engineered long time ago. So this is another thing which is very important. In other words, we can learn from what they did as well. What King Leopold did is not because we embrace what he did to Africans, but because we are like, from now on, we can also destroy this foundation that was made against us and develop a new system that will free our children, even in 20 years to come, 100 years to come, 300 years to come, if possible. In other words, we must start thinking about tomorrow, because right now, for example, the moment you give someone a tender or a contract, they get millions. They start buying cars and houses and everything. They enjoy themselves. They forget about building a legacy, building something that will be there even in 100 years to come. So this is the mistake that Black people are making right now, but is as a result of the system that was engineered. So if you want to fix this whole thing, you cannot just fix it just like that without understanding history. You need history so that you can know for a fact where things went wrong. So without any waste of time, Let's get started. Convert always the blacks by using a whip. Bear in mind that this letter was directed or given to the missionaries. But bear in mind why we have to use a whip now. Why we have to use a whip is because these missionaries were thieves, but they had to appear as if they were good, and they had to use certain scriptures so that people can believe that yes, you have to be beaten in order for you to understand. You have to cry in order for you to submit. In other words, you have to be forced in order for you to do things accordingly. That is why the very same system is also being used to the people of today, or to the current generation, because our fathers were beaten, our mothers were abused physically as well. But here is the thing: the very same system is also applied by us to our generation, even to our children. That is why our parents believe that in order for you to be in control, in other words, corporal punishment is the way to go. So corporal punishment is a system that was engineered, or is as a result of a system that was engineered to believe that in order for a black child to make sense, in order for a black child to be in control, in order for a black child to behave accordingly, you have to use a whip, because this is something that was used by missionaries long time ago in order to bring black people into submission. They had to use, just imagine you talk about God, but at the same time you behave in this way. That is why we have many people who are like, we love God, but at the end of the day, you can see that they don't behave like someone who likes God. It's because of the system that was engineered, that you have to be a hypocrite. That is why being a hypocrite is embraced today. Keep their women in 9 months of submission to work freely for us. That is why in the past, women used to work for free. Even men used to work for free, because in other words, if you are a slave, in other words, you cannot work for money. You cannot work for money. So whenever they pay you, they have to pay you maybe with food. They have to pay you with something else like alcohol and etc. This is where we come from. That is why you ask yourself, why these people like swimming in alcohol, drinking like nobody's business, is as a result of a system that was, like, for an example, engineered long time ago. In other words, make sure that they work for free. So those who used to live in the farms, especially in Southern Africa, would agree with me that there was a time when women would just work for free. Then men would be paid peanuts, a small amount of money. But when it comes to women, those who are working for farmers, they would work for free. Is as a result of what? Remember, is as a result of a system that was engineered long time ago. So that is why in order for us to deal with this system, it's not about dealing with the symptoms. You have to deal with the root of the problem. You have to deal with the root of the problem, because when you see people not having confidence in themselves, you have to understand that it's as a result of a system. You cannot just deal with the symptoms just like that. You cannot just deal with that lack of confidence as simple as ABC, but you have to go back to the roots of the problem. That's how it works. That's how it works. Force them to pay you in sign of recognition, goats, chicken, or eggs every time you visit their villages. Bear in mind that these people were missionaries. In other words, these people were the preachers of the word. But now they're like, you have to force them to give you something every time you visit them. You have to understand, even in the church, the very same system is still being used today. We have to understand where it comes from. When a pastor visits you, then your parents will be like, it's an insult to let the pastor go without giving any gift to a pastor. You have to understand it's a system. It's a system. Even these pastors, they are capitalizing, they are using the very same system, but they won't tell you. So King Leopold is like, every time you visit them, you have to force them to give you a chicken or a goat. And why? Because these people should not have anything. They should not have it in abundance. So every time they accumulate wealth, you have to take it away from them. This is how the system is working. This is a system that was engineered even in Berlin conference. That is why you have to understand that conference very well, the details of that particular conference very well. So if you are watching this video right now as we speak, you are fortunate. History is very important. I remember back then when we were young, we were told that history is not important. History was not significant at all. But right now, as we speak, I can tell you that history is one of the most important subjects that should be taught to Africans. History is very important. I know that African history makes other people uncomfortable, but it doesn't mean, or it doesn't change the fact that it has to be taught as well. So now they're like, you know what? Every time they come, every time you go to them, they have to give you something. They have to give you something. That is why even now there are many people who are like, it's an insult to go to church without having money. But if you go through the ancient writings, you'll figure out that it was never about money. But money was there. But it was never about gold and silver and money. But money was there. But what is going on right now? They had to squeeze money into all these things. So that is why there are many people who are like, it's an insult to go to church without money. So all these things, the moment you include money in the church, it's no longer of God. No matter whether you donate like this, you donate freely or whatever, it's no longer of God, because we are using the very same system that was used to make people poor. Because if you give to a church, you have to be someone who is okay, someone who can afford. In other words, you are taking something from your wealth, and you can afford to do so without being manipulated. But now, the moment they say it's an insult for you to come to church without having anything, then that's a problem. That's a problem. Now, that's when you understand now. Now it's a system. It's a they'll tell you about the needs of the church, the needs of all these things. It's because even those needs were created. It's a system. And make sure that these people never become rich. Make sure that these people never become rich. Saying every day that it's impossible for the rich to enter the kingdom of heaven. Make them pay tax each week at Sunday Mass. Use the money supposed for the poor to build flourishing business centers, and etc. and etc. But I just want to come back to this thing of like, don't allow these people to become rich. This is the system that is still operating today. Others call it capitalism. Others call it something else. It's a system that was created a long time ago, that you should never be rich. And there are many strategies that are used. And the church system is one of those systems, because now wolves are in various churches. So the very same system is still being used in a church, that you should never become rich. That is why people who are giving in church are people who are poor. And these churches are regarded as non-profit organizations, yet they make billions and billions here in Africa. Billions of dollars All churches combined, they make billions and billions from the poor. And at the end of the day, they're not doing anything to the poor. So if you can ask them to give you a report whereby they gave to people who are poor or those who are poor, maybe it will be few, not even more than 100 people, not even more than 100 people, maybe in a single country. Because these churches, we have to bear in mind, it's all about themselves, all about the man of God, it's all about the prophet, it's all about the one who is in control. That is why we have many people who are treating these pastors as angels, as gods, because it was a system that was created. This system was used by many people. So that is why right now we have pastors as well who are using the very same system to oppress people. So that is why we need to be very careful and we need to talk about these things. So please bear in mind, I'm not against the church. I'm not against what people are doing, but I'm against people who are robbing people in the name of God, or who are using a system or the very same system to make people poor. So the other system that people are using, or the system that is using to make you poor, is this thing of middle class. Is this thing of a middle class, because now people have been classified. You have low class, you have middle class, then you have high class. So no one wants to be in a lower class. So that is why many people are fighting by all means. They are working hard so that they can get or so that they can qualify to become a middle class. They are trying by all means to qualify to become a middle class. Some people, they even go to school, universities. They spend 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, 6 years, trying by all means to become a middle class. And the moment they become a middle class, now they have to remain there. They have to remain there. You have to make them poor. How do the system make them poor? Now you have to tell them that now you earn this salary. We have to tell you how you can use your salary. In other words, now you have to buy a car. And you don't just need an ordinary car that can take you from point A to point B, but you need a better car because you can afford. You are a middle class. They have to convince you that you are a middle class so that you can believe in yourself that indeed, now I have made it. I have arrived. Then they tell that this is going to be your installment, the amount of money that you are going to pay every month, your monthly installment. Just imagine. Now they tell you that you also qualify to buy a house. You can buy a house in a suburb. And this is the amount of money that you are going to pay. So now they have to, in other words, the system has to calculate everything that you are going to need monthly. Why? Because you should not have anything. You should not have money, because if you have money, you might start thinking about business. You might start thinking about like empowering people in your communities. You may start thinking about building something. You may, in other words, you may start thinking about a lot of things. So now this system was created to say, you know what? If you are in a middle class, you should remain there. So that is why they've created all these systems. That is why they tell you that you qualify for this loan. You qualify for this loan. But if you do your calculations, you can tell, I don't afford. But they tell you that you can afford, you do afford. But deep down in your heart, when you analyze, you're like, I cannot afford. Then they tell you that, remember, you are a middle class. You are a middle class. Oh my goodness. That is why we have this tendency of undermining one another. That is why the moment I look at you, I have to see if you qualify to talk to me and something like that. Why? Because the system was created so that we can have this mindset of undermining one another. So that is why even if I see that now I can no longer afford this installment, but because now I want people to keep on looking at me, I have to continue hustling. That is why many people who are called middle class are also hustling like us, are also hustling like everybody else. The system that was created that you should not be rich. Another system that was created not for you to become rich, you have to pay tax for everything. You have to pay tax for everything, even minor things. You have to pay for tax. So that at the end of the day, you don't have anything. That is why I'm like, if these African leaders are saying they want to empower Africans, what have they done when it comes to dealing with the system? Because they are using the very same system to oppress people. They always like introduce new bills that are oppressing people. They are always introducing new bills that you have to pay this tax, you have to pay this, you have to pay this, you have to pay this, you have to pay this. At the end of the day, you don't have anything. This is a system that was created long time ago. And another system that was also used to make people poor, especially here in South Africa, then people were forced to live in townships. In a township, you have a small yard. You can't plant anything. You can't have cows. You can't even like have a chicken coop in that yard. It was created intentionally. That is why if politicians are serious, if the government is serious, like we fought for apartheid system, so why are they not empowering? Why are they not empowering people? Why are they not changing the very same system? Because where people are living, it was a system so that they cannot do anything by themselves. In other words, you should not have a garden. If you have a garden, you must have a small garden. You cannot have a cow. You cannot milk a cow. You cannot do. It was a system that was created to keep people poor so that you can go and buy everything at the retail store. Why? So that the owner of that retail can become richer and richer. So this is a system that was created. This is a system that was created. So we have to, when we talk about all these things, it's not because we are like, you have to do this to other people. That's not what we are saying. But we are like, you have to know your history. Because if you want to solve these problems, you have to look at history. And again, you can also use history to hold these leaders accountable. Because now they are like, the government is doing this, the government is doing this, the government is doing this, but people are still living in camps. People are still living in camps. And there are many people who are embracing these places. They're like, I'm from this place. This place is a nice place, the best place in this city, or is the best township in South Africa. But when you go deep, people are suffering there. There's congestion. People don't have enough space. People can't breathe. It's a system that was created. It was engineered long time ago. So that is why you cannot just deal with the symptoms. You have to go deep. It was created so that you can remain poor. And the other thing that they are also using is that We have to blame God all the time. So when you go through a struggle, you have to blame God. In other words, even if you are lazy to wake up, you have to blame God, because at the end of the day, you have to hold your Bible and pray to God and say, God, please give me 1, 2, 3. Yet you have maybe enough space where you can maybe create a chicken coop, or maybe plant some vegetables and etc. and etc. But because now you have been wired to think that everything will come, everything will fall from the sky, you are waiting. You're not doing anything at all, even if you have a space, because there are those people who have like big yards, they have big spaces, but they are wired to only use a small space out of the space that they are having. Why? Because they've been manipulated. They've been manipulated by the very same system that said you have to make them think that it's impossible for a rich person to enter the kingdom of God. It's better for a camel to go through the eye of a needle than for this rich man to enter the kingdom of God. That is why every time you feel like now things are happening, you become scared, because at the end of the day, you are like, no, I don't want this thing to happen to me, because I also want to go through the eye of a needle as well, because if I become rich, then it's going to be impossible for me to go through the eye of a needle. So if I want to go through the eye of a needle, then it means I have to remain poor. Institute a confessional consciousness contrary to that of the decision maker. Teach these people to forget their heroes and to adore only ours. That is why there are few people who know about the likes of Sheikh Anta Diop, African scientist and a historian, a scholar, who proved that ancient Egypt was black. There are few people who know about Sheikh Anta Diop. Why? Because the system is like, make them not to celebrate their heroes. We have few people who know about the likes of Marcus Garvey, few people who know about Solomon Mahlangu, few people who know about Steve Biko. There are few people who know about the likes of Joseph Hill and Bob Marley. There are many people who know about Bob Marley, but they don't know what Bob Marley stood for. There are many people who know about Joseph Hill, but they didn't know what Joseph Hill stood for. Because you have to understand that they were like, you cannot listen to this type of music. Why? Because if you listen to this type of music, then it means you are mad, you are crazy. There's something wrong with you. But if you look deep into the message that is delivered through these songs, it's all about opening your mind. It's all about opening your mind. So that is why they don't want you there. And that is why many people, whenever they talk about a wise man once said, a wise man once said, a wise man once said, they are not referring to their forefathers. They are not referring to their fathers at all. Why? Because you should not know your history. That is why there are few people who know about Chris Hani. There are few people who know about Thomas Sankara and Kwame Nkrumah. There are few people. There are few people. Why? Because you should not celebrate your own people. Because the moment you start celebrating Marcus Garvey, then you'll start analyzing what is it that Marcus Garvey stood for. Then that thing will wake you up. So King Leopold is like, avoid those things. He's like, avoid those things. Never present a chair to a black that comes to visit you. Don't give him more than one cigarette. Never invite him for dinner, even if he gives you a chicken every time you arrive at his house. As I come to the end of this video, I would like to say history is important. You should not use history because you are against certain people, but you have to use history so that you are not manipulated like your forefathers. You have to do better. If you realize that there's a forefather who sold out, you have to learn from that selling out so that you yourself, you're not doing the very same mistake.